We now have a presentation from Ms. Lisepa Paeniu, who is the Crown Counsel in the Office of the Attorney General in Tuvalu. She will speak on the Tuvalu's Family Protection Act. Well, it's actually called the Family Protection and Domestic Violence Act, and the challenges with obtaining and carrying family protection orders. I will now invite Ms. Paeniu to speak, and you have 15 minutes, please.
So I'll be talking about the challenges with obtaining and carrying out family protection orders here in Tuvalu. So our legislation came into force in 2014, and Section 13 of the Act outlines the 5 protection orders that you may apply for in the Senior Magistrates Court here in Tuvalu. We had amended that to give powers to the Island Court magistrates so that they could also hear applications for family protection orders and make orders, so that all the outer island magistrates could actually grant these protection orders as well. So the first application you can make is the emergency protection order under Section 15. This is made ex parte. It will only last for 3 days, and it could be only renewed once after it expires. Then second, we have the temporary protection order. This is in Section 16 to 18, also made ex parte. It lasts for 30 days, but the senior magistrate or the Island Court magistrate should list the case for hearing prior to the expiry of the order. Then we have the consent protection order under Section 19, and this is made inter partes, so we have to serve the other party, and this remains in place until another order or a further order is made by the court. Then we have our interim protection order under Section 21, and this could be made ex parte, and this is one of the longest protection orders, as it could last up to 2 years maximum. And then finally, we have the final protection order under Section 25. There's a proper case hearing where the court invites social welfare department, counselors, and also a conciliation conference between the parties. And this could last until the court either varies, extends, or cancels it. So challenges in obtaining family protection order. So the first challenge, when I spoke to the DV police officer, she says is that for the weekends, you won't be able to get a family protection order because the senior magistrate, unfortunately, the practice has always been that he, back in 2015 till 2018, wouldn't sit during the weekends, and he wouldn't hear any family protection orders throughout the weekend. So if a DV case happens on Saturday, police would just detain the abuser until preferably he calms down, the accused calms down. And if that's not the case, then they move the women and children into the safe houses until Monday morning for the FPO application. And then the second challenge in obtaining FPOs here is that because there's only one police officer that works on all these cases, If the application isn't detailed enough or there's specific information that the magistrate feels hasn't been included in the application won't be heard. And so it could take a while, but fortunately, there hasn't been a single application that has been rejected. All have always been approved or granted rather. So that's a good thing, I guess. Now, in carrying out these family protection orders, one of the main challenges that we faced is that the married couples themselves don't adhere to it. So if we place the mother and children in the safe houses, we tend to see the husband within a few days or in that same week already reuniting or joining his family. And this has happened on a couple of occasions. So it's quite difficult to tell a married couple that, you know, he's not allowed in the safe house. And then we have the issue where police personnel is limited. And when we talk about this, there's a specific case in 2019 where there was a family protection order granted, and the applicant moved to her sister's house with her 3 young children. And the police had no idea that the husband managed to actually get to that house and started threatening the children and the applicant. And he was there for hours before they could even contact the police. And so that was a huge issue, as he had actually threatened them with a machete. And of course, there's the consequences for a breach of the FPO are not severe. We've had only 2 family protection orders breached so far. And during the hearing of the cases, the penalty was not severe as we prosecutors would hope. So what happened in the first instance was with that case where the accused went and threatened his family with a machete for hours on end outside the house. He was sentenced to be relocated back to his home island so that he wouldn't have any contact with his family here on the capital. And yet he managed to escape. Well, he managed to come back to the capital island and of course continue the abuse. And in a second case, and until now, the breach of that order still the case has never been heard. I'm not exactly sure where the fault lies, but then there was another instance where the couple reconciled within a few days of the family protection order, and they started living together in the safe house, and there was no consequence for that. So those are the experiences here in Tuvalu. On average, there is less than 10 family protection orders that the Senior Magistrates Court here in Canal City has received since 2014, a year. All have always been granted, but there are, usually it's just the emergency protection order that they need. And that usually helps keep the peace. And it really does protect the women and children. However, there's a lot to be done with awareness on the act, especially for women who continuously face domestic violence and abuse in the homes and their children, because not many people are aware of the legislation, not many people are aware of these orders that are in place. And so that's something that our office and the police and the Gender Affairs Department really needs to work on. And that brings me to the end of Tuvalu's experiences. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Lisepa. I just wondered if you'd be happy to take any questions. We're still waiting on a couple of panelists for our next session, and we do have at least 5 minutes. Are you happy to answer any questions?
Yep, that's fine.
Of those of you who are listening to the symposium, if you'd like to put your questions in the chat box while we're waiting to see if you have any questions, I'll ask a question. You mentioned that to date it's really been the emergency orders that have been applied for. Do you think if there was greater awareness of the different kinds of orders that there might be more use of the other types of orders?
Yes, Judy. I think that the women who have been abused for so long and their children would definitely want to opt for the longer protection order and not just the 3-day one. Because some have actually wanted they've actually asked the police to imprison the accused immediately without trial because they're so scared of him. But yeah.
I have a good question here. Given this, the small population of Tuvalu, how hard is it for the police to arrest someone?
Oh, it's not hard at all. I mean, everybody helps the police. If there's a DV case, nosy neighbors would always just point to wherever he's gone, wherever they've seen him last. So it's quite easy.
Do you think having this legislation and having these protection orders has in any way impacted on attitudes towards domestic violence?
No.
No?
In fact, we had a radio interview, and unfortunately it was live on air, and we asked random men on the street what did they think about women getting a beating from their husbands, and almost, I think there was 90%, unfortunately, justified why that the culture in Tuvalu allows this practice to beat the wife, to make her stay in her place so she knows that she's supposed to be subservient, which is very, very sad.
So though the local community may help the police, which is fantastic, there's still widespread attitudes that would indicate that the community members would support certain kinds of violence or abuse towards wives.
Yes, in the cases that we've had reported to the police, neighbors would call and report the incident, but they would not step in. They would never enter the home and try to stop the man from beating his wife and kids.
Okay. There's a comment here about the fact that there's a lack of translated piece of legislation, so that reduces the likelihood that people do understand the nature and the provisions of the law.
Yes, definitely. If it was mandatory for legislation to be in Tuvaluan, then that would definitely have helped a lot of people. But unfortunately for me in English.
What would be your priority for the future then, do you feel? What would you like to see happen?
We would like to have as much public awareness, public education on these issues, and train more counselors, because nowadays, just recently, this year we've had a lot of DV cases. Both the couple would come in for counseling. They would actually voluntarily come in for counseling. And I think counseling is, although people don't trust the counselors yet, but there's a culture of them, or there's a practice developing that they're now more fond of coming to talk to a counselor, and they've established that counseling actually works for some people.
Mm-hmm. Is that couple counseling, is it? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Couple counseling.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was a very interesting presentation, and thank you for joining us today. There are a couple more questions in the chat that you might want to look at and answer yourself, but we do have to move on to our next panel now. So thank you.